to the Creation Station. So, now that the general discussion about anime is out of the way with my last video, if you have not seen it, the link should be right up here. Let's dive into one genre of the medium, the romantic comedy. Brace yourself for this long name. Osamake, the romantic comedy where the childhood friend won't lose. Yes, the whole thing. It's based on the light novel by Shuichi Nimaru. Light novels are novella-sized stories designed for teens and young adults in Japan. Usually, if you see an anime with a long title like this, it tends to be based off of a light novel. From here on out, I will be referring to it as Osamake for simplicity's sake. Although I really like this show, I can't recommend it to beginners, but I'll try to do my best to explain so anyone can understand why I do like it. There's a type of subgenre that has come out of the romantic comedy in anime called the harem. Don't worry, this isn't about polygamy. It's called this because in these stories there is a main male lead with multiple female leads that are interested in him, with some actively pursuing him more than others. There are some good reasons for this story. One reason is that it actually branched out of the love triangle. What better way to add to the drama and comedy of two females fighting over a male than to add more females to the chaos? Another reason is to attract more viewers. By having different girls, there is more likely one that the viewer will fancy over the others, and the viewer will stick around rooting for their favorite. Another reason is to just make your story longer. More girls, you have more characters to flesh out with their backstories and interactions with the main character to work with. The harem genre tends to be very trope-laden. The main character tends to be not too bright, at least in the way of love, to the point he doesn't realize the girls are interested in him. All the girls usually fit a different archetype character checkbox. The lead male, often called the protagonist, isn't, as he never really changes throughout the story. On the contrary, it usually is the opposite, as he causes the girls to change as they deal with their feelings for him. So, now that you've had your crash course on harems, let's see how this adds up with Osamake. First, let's deal with the title. Childhood friend won't lose. One of the character types in most harem and rom-coms in general is that of the childhood friend. Often the childhood friend does lose in love, so the title is an instant attention grabber to anyone familiar with the genre, since it's promising something different. Is it something different? Yes and no. When I first watched the show, the first 2 episodes were out, so I got to see both at once. And after the second one, I realized that all the love interests in this show were childhood friends. I about fell on the floor laughing when I realized this. The title was right, but it didn't give any of the outcome away. This wittiness alone had me hooked on the show. But let's get down to the nitty-gritty of the show. The male lead of the show is Suharu Maru. He's an ex-child star who quit acting due to a tragic accident that killed his mom, who is also an actress. The story starts several years later with him in high school. Tetsuhiko Kai, Suharu's fellow classmate and close friend, I say with that in quotes because he always seems to be stirring up trouble for Suharu and using him in some capacity or other. We do find out later he's out for revenge against his own father. Fortunately, they never continue his storyline before the series ends. If there's a second season, I really hope they continue his story. Kururu Shida is Suharu's neighbor and childhood friend. Although they are all childhood friends, she's the one that most fits the trope. She's the girl next door and grew up with him. She has 3 younger sisters, 2 of which are twins. Midori Shida is the next youngest, though taller than Kururu. The twins are Aoi being the oldest and Akane being the youngest. Although they're not main love interests, they all do have feelings for Suharu and count as childhood friends, making the title even funnier. Shirokusa Kachi is an award-winning novelist who is a beautiful and very popular. After finding out she has a softer side that she only shows him, Suharu crushes on her and considers her his first love. I would beg to differ, but let's continue with the characters. Maria Momosaka is another childhood actor that worked with Suharu on the set of the last film he was on, and has continued acting. She and her older sister left home due to abusive parents, and Maria considered Suharu's mom like her own. Kuroha, Shirokusa, and Maria seem to be the main girls, at least as much as the anime covers. There are more characters I'll bring up as they are relevant, but these are the central cast. I'll be revealing some of the story for the first arc. Skip ahead if you don't want to be spoiled. The story starts off with Kuroha asking Suharu out, and him turning her down. This all happens off screen, but we find out about it while Suharu is talking to Tetsuiko in class. Tetsuiko finds out that Suharu has a crush on Shirokusa. Kuroha shows up to tell Suharu that she was just kidding about asking him out. It was just part of a game. Shirokusa's friend Mikomin accidentally blurts out that Shirokusa was asked out by Mitsuru Abe, a second-generation actor. After being rejected before even having a chance to ask, Suharu goes off and sulks by the riverside. Kuroha shows up to console him, and he tells her how nice she is, even though he turned her down, and even though she said it was just a game, he knew it was a front for her, for how she really feels. This shows that our male lead isn't a total idiot when it comes to love, like many of these main characters are. After Suharu calms down, Kuroha proposes that they get revenge on Shirokusa by pretending to be dating, so it seemed like he was leading Shirokusa along rather than him. Later, while Suharu is reflecting on the roof, Mitsuru confronts him on his goals for dating Shirokusa, saying he's dating her because he knows Suharu likes her and is doing it to humiliate him because he hates him for being more talented than himself when Suharu was younger. We find out later Mitsuru has ulterior motives and isn't being honest with his threats. After the confrontation, Suharu hatches his biggest plan to show up Mitsuru during the school confession festival. While Mitsuru is performing on stage, Suharu will join him and show him up. Afterwards, he's going to confess to Mitsuru's girlfriend, Shirokusa. I won't tell what happens at the festival because that's the end of the arc, and I want to leave some surprises. I'll just say that things don't go as planned. After the chaos settles down, Tetsuiko and Mitsuru have a conversation about who won, and Mitsuru explains the truth about his motives. This doesn't seem too odd, but Mitsuru doesn't show up in any more of the story except to discuss the winner after each arc with Tetsuiko. I don't know if this happens in the light novel or if it was done in the anime to give the character more screen time. Whatever the reason, I find it hilarious that they both have this discussion and bring a character that's no longer part of the story into it every time. We find out during this arc that Shirokusa is a childhood friend as well, one that Suharu hung out with but thought she was a boy. We find this out during the second episode, even though the other characters don't know it yet. This is where I realized all the girls were going to be childhood friends, and as I said earlier, I was hooked. All throughout this revenge scheming, we find out that the reason Suharu stopped acting was because his mom died from a tragic accident while acting in a show he was in, and it traumatized him. So while doing this planning, he's dealing with getting over his trauma since he's got to get up on stage and act in front of an audience again. This is one reason why I like Osamake. It's not simply about a bunch of girls chasing after a stupid boy. On the contrary, it's about a boy overcoming trauma and re-entering the showbiz world. It has an actual story. The girls are part of it, but the main character grows and overcomes things. Another aspect I like about the show is the girls all being childhood friends. I know it comes off as just a gimmick to bait the viewers, but I believe it gives the show more depth. It's more realistic for a bunch of girls to be crushing on one guy if they already have emotional ties to him, rather than them falling for him because he was nice to them once. Often is what happens in Harems. Now, on a more personal note, whenever the childhood friend loses in most of these stories, I always feel burned, and why the title of this series first grabbed my attention. I had a childhood friend that I had a crush on during school. Now, we weren't nearly as close as any of these characters, but I did ask her out and was turned down. It was probably bad timing on my part, and I should have asked a lot sooner. To her, I'd like to apologize for putting her in that situation. But you live, you learn, and hindsight is 20/20. On that note, I'd like to address a lot of the comments I read about how a lot of the characters are either bad or stupid for their actions. They're teenagers, in love. They're going to make mistakes. They don't even understand their feelings most of the time, as is evident with Suharu in the first arc. I doubt any of the commenters would go through some of the same situations unscathed. Besides, watching them screwing up and struggling is part of the charm of these shows as they learn and grow. I judge shows mostly on story, but the animation of this show was really good. The character designs were great. Oftentimes, girls looked at all the same, just with different colored hair and eyes. If we're lucky, they have different heights. This one, they were different body types and all had faces that looked different. If you just had a close-up of their face, you could tell who you were looking at without seeing their hair or height-wise with another character. The opening and closings were quite catchy and fun. The only problem I could see is it felt like some of the scenes may have been cut to keep the show to 12 episodes, but it was done well enough, so it felt like we weren't missing any of the main story. I ended up rewatching the series over since it was about 2 months since I'd seen the last episode. It has really good rewatch potential as they teased characters before they introduced them, and there was a lot of double meaning behind things that were said that you wouldn't understand till later. In conclusion, I enjoyed this series for its clever writing, its subversion of tropes, its wit, all while giving us a realistic story. My biggest problem is the show ended with the story not finished. So here's hoping for a second season. I don't recommend this show to anyone not familiar with the genre, but to those who are, you're going to enjoy it. Other good harems I do recommend for anyone are Quintessential Quintuplets and We Never Learn. On a similar note of friends becoming more than friends, Lovely Complex is a great rom-com, though not a harem. Osamake shows that you can take tired old tropes and stand them on their head and make something wonderful. It's a great example of using creativity to make a successful story. The original light novel ranked 5th in the 2020 Takajimash's annual light novel guide book in its category, showing I'm not the only one who enjoyed it. So, what will you make? Thanks for watching. I won't be covering anime normally, but I felt this show was worthy of discussion, so please share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you haven't yet, subscribe for more discussion and reviews of creative works. And don't forget, creativity is key.